Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Telegram, Rumble, Odyssey, and the Prepper Broadcast Network. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim, and today is January 26th, 2023, and this is episode 242 of the Workshop Podcast. We are getting very close to a milestone. I love my numerical milestones. It'll be a good one. We're going to have fun with that episode. And I believe it's going to be a giveaway episode, which will be great. So how is everyone out there this evening, this week, whatever the case may be? It's funny when I'm always, I know. So Chris can see a strange light over my shoulder. And so I made some renovations the other day, guys. And I pulled a wall out, and now my door won't shut completely. So you're getting this little crack of light. So I hope it's a guardian angel. It's always miserable when you're doing renovations, trying to keep everything looking the same. So yeah, it's been a busy week here. Unbelievable. Let's get a couple of announcements out of the way first, and then we'll dive into a few things. I'm looking forward to tonight's episode. It's a kind of a different thing. I had a new kind of idea of where to go and kind of a new series to start, so it should be fun. So first off, Fortress K9, it's Thursday night, so we always got to thank our sponsor, my brother Joel from fortressk9.com or the Protection Dog Podcast. So if you are, we got Chicken Hawk Farmstead in here. Good to have you, brother. So yes, if you are looking to get motivated, if you're interested in dogs, or you just want to see hear a story about rising from the ashes. The word Phoenix is thrown around a lot, but Joel truly is that. He went through just an awful time. He's very open about it. I won't share it here, but if you want to hear his story, go over and check him out. But he's on all the places: TikTok, he's on Instagram, he's on YouTube, and of course his podcast. So support him because he supports us, and he is a good friend. Beyond anything else, at the two events I went to in September and October, him and his wife were always a place where I could sit and just chill and have a great time. Hey, we got Mechanical Otter over on Telegram. Great to have you. Always great to have you. So that's number one. Number two, what do we got? February 2nd. So what's that? 6 days away right now. That will be the launch of our third annual Groundhog Day giveaway. Always love to have the Groundhog. I'm not even sure how I started the Groundhog Day thing, but became a thing, so now it's a thing. And so keep an eye out. We got a whole bunch of giveaway stuff coming up. I'm quite excited about it. I think we're only going to run it for a week, so get in while the getting's good. Brian Alexovich from the Lots Project just did his giveaway. It was good. Turned out he had a really good turnout for it, and we gave away a year subscription to the Patch of the Month Club, which isn't something I give away lightly. So I'm excited about that. Can't wait to get that first one sent out to the winner. And now this one is kind of cool. I just got, hired, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to be at the Thrivalist Fair in Addy, Washington, the last weekend in May this year. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be doing 2 presentations. I'm going to be speaking on entrepreneurship one day and on preparedness the next day. It's a big deal. They contacted me. Apparently, it's a husband and wife who put together this fair. It's been growing by leaps and bounds the last few years. They saw me speak at Prepper Camp and decided that they wanted to reach out and see if I'd be available to come. So it's a day's drive from here, so it's not too bad. Just kind of over the, I guess, what is it, the Idaho Panhandle or whatever, if I've got my geography right, just into the eastern border of Washington State. So that's really exciting. So I'm going to be down at LFTN Spring Workshop and then back up. And then about a month later, I'll be heading down there. So if you're anywhere near Addy, Washington, the last weekend in May, that's where I'm going to be. And looks like Chicken Hawk is on his last day of vacation. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Absolutely. Always nice to have a little bit of time off. All right. So let me just move Telegram around so that we can see the chat from there as well. We're also live on Spreaker for the Prepper Broadcast Network tonight, guys. It's Thursday. We always love it when we can. And all right. Oh, yeah, Dixon. Yep, security alarms going off every single time. All right, so next we got the weekly workshop. I don't even know. I've been busier than a two-peckered owl, which is not a bad thing at all. I've got so many things on the go. We're trying our damnedest to get the daycare done. My saving grace this month has been that we just went 29 days without snow. Finally had to clear snow yesterday morning. Had to put sand down this morning because we got some ice, but it was just, it was beautiful because I was able to just go balls to the wall at the daycare. We'll talk about that. I've put down vinyl flooring, vinyl baseboards. I've done framing, drywalling, painting, installing plumbing fixtures, and we ended up making our own bathroom stalls because I can't remember the exact price, but we saved thousands of dollars by framing them up with 2x4s and using good one-side plywood. And they look great, and they'll probably last longer than any of the pre-made metal ones that you'll see online, but they were just asininely expensive. So I just said, no, we'll make it ourselves. My son and I spent the day yesterday cleaning out a bank property, had to make 3 trips to the dump. That was a good day, though. It was nice. He's working full-time at the local farm supply shop, so I don't get to work with him as often as I'd like. But it was a good day. We had a lot of fun, got a lot of junk thrown to the dump, and got a little bit of furniture for our across-the-way apartment that we call it, the one that Chris Dixon stayed at last time. So when he's up, it'll be all furnished for him this time. We've had some warm days. If you guys have any snow in your roofs and it warms up, keep an eye out on ice dams. I've had 2 rentals that the ice dams have backed up on, and water has gotten in through the windows or up under the eaves. So just keep an eye on it, because I spent about an hour with a guy on a roof today breaking up. The ice was so stuck that we had to break it up with a hammer before we could get it to come off the roof. Miserable. I got a few new tools that have shown up, which has been kind of neat. I've been kind of excited. You guys have seen the tool bag. I picked up also something I haven't even posted on social yet, but I got a DeWalt cordless screwdriver. It's one of those, I actually seen it on the Project Farm website, YouTube channel. And it's, when you move it, it has a gyroscope in it, so it knows which way to turn. I'm kind of excited about testing that out. I picked up some of those Milwaukee Professional Sharpie markers. I picked up a pair of the Knipex pliers wrench, which I'm really excited about using. I haven't actually added them to my tool pouch yet. But Letty Lou's in. She said, yeah, we were worried about ice dams on the house and the carport. It's just been a really bad year for it. And I've been busy enough that I've turned down a few roof raking jobs this year. But luckily, there's a company out of town who's been coming down and doing some snow removal off of roofs, because it's just been a horrible, horrible year for it. Just kind of a perfect storm. We got 18 inches of snow or a little better early on, and then it warmed up. So there you go. So yeah. And I sent out the patches last week. If you've got yours yet, Mr. Dixon, you'll be the first one to get it, of course. And the American ones go down, and then my Santa's Little Helper sends them out from there. I've been trying to get all of this worked out with this local ship across the border company, but I'm losing faith in them by the day. Apparently they lost a couple of their major employees. And so now what used to be a 1-day email turnaround is now something like 7 days to get a response via email. So that does not instill confidence. Let's put it that way. So, all right, now next we got a new segment. Hopefully you guys will like this name. It's a play on words, of course, but we're going to call it emptying the nail bag as opposed to emptying the mailbag. So each week, maybe once a week, twice a week, I don't know. Any of these individual Just Tim shows, I'm going to either answer a piece of mail or respond to a question from social media, something that came in the nail bag. So yes, so this one came from Andy. He sent me an email. We corresponded a couple of times. So he said, hey, you got a recommendation for a good silicone spray seal? He said, I also need to get a kink out of a hose. He had a kinky hose, I'll tell you. Anyway, said, my rain barrel is leaking from the connection to the barrel. I have caulked and recalked and still have a small leak. So I figured I'd spray the holy hell out of it with Flex Seal. Well, it's still leaking. It looks like it's permeating through the Flex Seal. Everything is tight and plumber's taped up, but still has that small leak. And he said, also, my downspout collector has a factory kink in it from the box. And good. Thanks, Chris Dixon. He just sent me a little tip on getting things done right. I'm going to have to deal with him. I said I kept it straight in the sun for a few hours before I put it on, and it still keeps getting kinkier than that bar girl at 2 a.m. So yeah, so he's got a rain barrel that's leaking and a kinky hose. So there you go. So I sent him a response, and I wanted to share this with you guys because sometimes it's better off to start over from scratch. And so what I basically told him, Letty said, "Whoop whoop, dad joke alert." So sometimes it's good to go right back to the beginning. So what ended up happening was he caulked around it, caulked again, and he kept getting the leak, and then tried to spray some more shit over top of it. And a lot of times what ends up happening is you just don't deal with the underlying issue. And it may not have been his, something he did wrong per se. You just never know. Maybe it got a little cross-threaded. Maybe didn't get the tape in right, whatever. So my recommendation was to scrape all the caulking off completely, unthread the spout, and then re-tape it with some heavy-duty Teflon tape. Like I like the yellow stuff. And then for the hell of it, add some of that true blue sealant. I have yet to have anything leak that I've used heavy-duty Teflon and the blue sealant, the true blue sealant as well. So anyway, see if that solves the problem. Now, as far as those kinky hoses, what I recommended, because, you can try to use a heat gun, you can try to warm them up, but when they come factory kinked like that, they can be a holy hell mess of trying to fix out. So what I ended up telling him was put a piece of heavy duty or rigid pipe through there and just leave it. Now it may take the kink out over time, but honestly, it'll keep it from collapsing on itself and you'll be all set. So he ended up following up with me. He said, "Hey Tim, just wanted to let you know, thanks for the recommendations for the rain barrel. I bought it used and had to crawl inside to unscrew it. But by the time I realized it was reverse threaded, there we go. It was tighter than hell. So he used a clear marine sealant on the inside and said, fuck it." I then used Loctite Marine Fast Cure to the outside, and it apparently worked. He said, as for the hose, I needed an inch and a quarter, but Lowe's didn't sell anything under 100 feet at $135. So instead of replacing the hose, I had some extra PVC pipe, slid it up inside the tubing so it should hold it straight until it straightens the kinks out. I know I will lose some volume, but in North Carolina, we usually get rain events often enough to make up for it. Sure enough, yesterday we had an inch come down, filled up 2 rain barrels without a problem. I did use the true blue thread sealant to the other fittings and the overflow hose, which all worked. Thanks for your recommendations. Well, that's exciting. I like to hear that. If you guys haven't used it, that true blue thread sealant is the cat's ass. I love it. If you can only use one thing on fittings, that's the way to go. But I've had some where they've leaked with either just thread tape or just true blue. But if you use thread tape and true blue, it'll back you up. So especially when dealing with brass fittings, I've had some issues with those, and I'm sure somebody out there can kind of fill me in on what the issue is with brass, but either way, it worked. So of course, a few weeks ago, I come up with this new idea. I was reading an article. This is somewhat unrelated, but I want you to know my thinking process into this one. So I was reading an article about the massive blackout that happened in New York City quite some time ago. And I thought, man, that would make a really good episode. So then I went down this path of thinking and I thought, you know what else I could do an entire series on weather events, on things that happened, preparedness events, things that happened where people unfortunately either passed away or, they were caught off guard. And we can go like kind of because I love my history, but I love to pull out preparedness lessons from it. And so I was thinking, hey, I want to start out with the blackout in New York City. But it ended up, while I was thinking about all of this, they had the nasty blizzard in Buffalo over the Christmas break, which ended up being just a horrible situation. And there was a lot of people that ended up passing away, guys. And I thought, let's take a deep dive into the Buffalo blizzard first. Let's see what kind of lessons we can learn from what happened. And we can see maybe if there's a pattern to what people end up doing that end up getting them hurt or killed or, just bad situation happens. So I thought what we'll do, I haven't come up with a name for this series yet, but it'll fall in line with, my empty container series, fall in line with the history of prepping series. This will be, serious weather events or serious acts of Mother Nature from the past that we can go back, take a look at. Because I find looking at these events, especially, with 2020 hindsight, I find it always gives me, I don't know, I enjoy taking a deep dive look. I learn some things. I find it intriguing. So yeah, let's dive in. So first off, you got to know that an event was serious. And so Letty Lou, I think you are right. She says Buffalo gets slammed all the time with snow. And I think people just get apathetic. Yes, I agree with you. I think that's the type of thing that ended up happening when the big hurricane went through Louisiana, New Orleans, because it was just people like, well, I've seen it. I've lived through worse. I've sat on my front porch and, drank tea or whatever every time hurricanes come through. And then finally the big one did, and people were apathetic. And that's exactly what happened. So first off with this, if you didn't hear about the Buffalo blizzard, well, the weather system itself ended up affecting a majority of the continental United States and Canada for that matter. But like I said, it's a serious event when it has its own Wikipedia page, unfortunately. So the event, let's kind of fill you in on what happened. So the event ran from December 21st to the 26th. So basically, first day of winter to Boxing Day. It ended up being a cyclone, which is, basically a hurricane. So it was a blizzard with hurricane strength winds. It ended up doing about $5.5 billion in damage. And overall, continent-wide, it ended up killing 106 people and with just over about 7.5 million people out of power for a certain period of time. It ended up, so far this year, it's been responsible for the coldest temperatures in the continent, all the way down to Miami, Florida. Miami, Florida ended up having the coldest temperatures it's had this year due to that weather, and anything east of the Rockies. So it basically came in and followed the Rockies across. Anything from the Rockies over was affected. Overall, it was a bad winter storm. It was a bad winter system, no matter who got it, but it was absolutely the worst in Buffalo. And the main reason for that, and this is kind of the area where my wife grew up in Sarnia, which is in Ontario. But the main reason these blizzards get so friggin' bad out there is the lake effect. And if you don't know what the lake effect is, it's exactly what it sounds like when a weather system goes across the lake and it ends up, so you got a cold air mass, it moves across long expanses of warmer lake water. It ends up picking up a whole metric shit ton of precipitation. And Chris Dixon says it was a Tuesday for Western Canadians. Yeah. So they ended up picking up a ton of precipitation, and it just kind of stalls and it dumps. So what were the final numbers on this? I had to look at this because this was intriguing. It sucks, but it was intriguing. So Buffalo ended up getting 52 inches. That's not centimeters. That's 52 inches of snow. They ended up getting a minus 30 degree Fahrenheit wind chill. They get 80-mile-an-hour winds. Anytime you're dealing with a blizzard with 80-mile-an-hour winds, what would that be? About close to 120 kilometer an hour wind. That is miserable. Somebody threw in zero visibility. Well, yeah, no shit. If you get 80-mile-an-hour winds with snow, you're not going to have any visibility. And in the surrounding areas of Buffalo, there ended up being 39 people who passed away. So I got to thinking, I'm like, well, what the hell? How do almost 40 people end up dying in an area that is used to getting hammered by snow? Now, of course, they called it a once-in-a-generation snowstorm, and it was bad. It was worse than just about anything else they had. But how the hell, like, what happened, And so I'm going to share a few stories of some people and what happened to them. I don't want it to come across as, glorifying or taking advantage of anybody's memory. I want to share what happened, because anybody can make a bad mistake, I guess, is what you'd call it. And all of this, I went through a ton of newspaper articles to pull up the different things, but I basically wanted to find out more so what I was looking for was patterns. What decisions were made that caused people to end up, succumbing to the weather, and did they come from certain areas? Did they have certain backgrounds? All of that. But I wanted to dig in to the numbers behind this event so we can maybe say, oh, okay, this is what happened. So if we have a big storm, because, There was a storm here. The winter before I moved here was one of the nastiest blizzards they've ever had. Shut things down for it was close to 7 days here in this town. So if we can look, and unfortunately, what do they say, that safety laws are written by, the mistakes of the people that came before us. But I thought, hey, let's take a look. Let's see what happens when people do things maybe they shouldn't have done in these storms. What can we learn from it? So, all right. So out of the, they broke it down. 17 people who passed away were found outdoors. And then you might ask yourself, well, what were people doing outdoors in a blizzard? That's what I asked myself as well. 11 people were found in their homes and 4 were found in a vehicle. So let's break it down. We'll talk about it. We'll pull some lessons out of it, and hopefully maybe we can learn a little bit from it because, if nothing else, if we can learn. I got thinking about this the other day again, and I've had quite a few kind of mild or moderate weather issues that we've dealt with that we were fairly well prepared for. We also dealt recently, last summer, with the Rogers IT outage across Canada. So I think I'm going to do a whole episode on some things we've dealt with up here, but let's deal with these ones and we'll see where we end up. So this guy named Abdul, he was 26. He left his home in Buffalo Saturday afternoon in blizzard conditions to get milk and other supplies. He never made it home. He left a pregnant wife behind, and he said that he was going to get provisions for a family who asked for his help. So that's the part that I put in parentheses. He was going out to try to help a family who didn't have the provisions they should have had. And this is going to be a theme you're going to see. Not being prepared for this. And we're going to go down here and a little further down. We're going to talk about the timeline and how much heads up warning people had for this kind of stuff. But the poor guy left behind a pregnant wife because he was trying to help out another family. A lady named Monique, she, her daughter said it would have been a simple decision any other day, but a blizzard was setting in. She walked everywhere in the city. She always walked. After 2 hours, she hadn't returned. Her daughter asked on a Facebook page if anybody had seen her mom. Soon after, she got a message, and the gentleman had found her mother who had succumbed to the cold. This is what the daughter said. She said, Mom always felt invincible. There's what Letty was talking about, kind of the apathetic. She said she always felt invincible. So I'm assuming she just thought she could handle the conditions. Can't really tell my mom anything. She's going to do what she's going to do. I'm assuming she thought she was strong enough for it. So again, people, we consider our normal scenario, whatever we end up living with on a day-to-day basis. We think, oh, yeah, I've always dealt with it, so I should be able to deal with this. But this was a different scenario. Another one was a lady named, Melissa Morrison. She was a 22-year-old woman who grew up in North Carolina, and she ended up being trapped in her vehicle by the blizzard. She was, this lady's name was Taylor, and she was driving home from work. She'd worked at a senior citizen center. She was only 6 minutes away from her house by car, and she becomes stranded. Her relatives became frantic. Taylor called 911 and was waiting on first responders, but she was planning on waiting in her vehicle until she ran out of gas. The problem is that first responders couldn't get to her because the roads were absolutely buried in. There was no way to get out, no way to get in. She waited there, and the cold ended up getting her. But the thing that I put there was Taylor was driving home from work. Not a good idea. So her family ended up tracking her phone to the address. A good Samaritan went out, found her, and ended up bringing her back eventually. Another one was William Clay. He was 56. He was on the way to the store. His sister said he walked out on Christmas Eve on his 56th birthday, was on his way to the store when the weather worsened. He got caught in it and never made it home. Morris Singer was walking home from a Narcotics Anonymous meeting on December 23rd. He never made it home. Henry Toledo, 55. He was out shoveling snow and collapsed and died of a heart attack when he come back in. Timothy Murphy, 27, was found in his home on Christmas Day after heavy snow had covered the exhaust vent of his furnace, causing carbon monoxide to back up in his home. We know what happens there. And we know something that probably could have prevented that, right? And again, this isn't this is a tough thing to deal with, a tough thing to talk about, because I wasn't sure how to deal with it, but I wanted to tell these people stories because if nothing else, hopefully someone out there who's listening can say, oh my God, I haven't checked the batteries of my carbon monoxide detector in 3 years. Maybe it doesn't work anymore. Or maybe somebody will think twice about hopping in their vehicle and driving home from work in the worst storm ever. Maybe they'll say, you know what, it is okay. Maybe I'll hang around for a bit, right? Carolyn Eubanks, she relied on an oxygen machine. She lost power. She collapsed when her oxygen machine didn't work anymore. This one is Stanslawa, 73, ventured out in her car on Friday morning. Hours later, she called her daughter, saying she was trapped in the snow, and you can figure out where that story ended up going. So that was just kind of a touch. Those were the ones I was able to easily find by reading through a bunch of different articles. So something I kind of copy and pasted from one of the articles that I found was, according to a local source, a number of the deaths were cardiac events related to snow shoveling or snow blowing. And I wanted to share this because it's something I hadn't really heard before. But this local doctor said he advised seniors or anyone else with cardiac issues, including high blood pressure, to not attempt to shovel snow or to plow snow. And the reason for that isn't just because you're working harder, but he said the cold conditions further constrict people's arteries and veins, making it tougher for the heart to pump blood. It was thick, heavy snow, and in some areas, many feet of depth because of the drifting. He said, we don't want you to become another statistic. And that's what it comes down to, right? Because unfortunately, whenever we succumb in an event like this, we become a statistic. So all of these people, I wanted to tell their stories first. And then I wanted to give you the timeline of what happened. So like I said, it was basically a 5-day event. But on December, so it's not like it came without warning, right? It didn't just kind of show up all of a sudden and hit Buffalo in that area. So December 19th, the news started reporting. They said there's signs that it's pointing toward it's going to be a really bad storm. So that was basically 4 days before the storm hit Buffalo. They said, hey, heads up, storm's going to be bad. And that's when, okay, just keep it in the back of your mind. Say, I'll think about it. I'll listen for a bit and pay attention, make sure. December 20th, they issued winter weather alerts. Okay, that's the next step up. Start making a plan, just in case, right? 21st, that was Wednesday. They said that was the last day people could travel that wouldn't be impacted. It's also the first time they used this is a once in a generation term. December 22nd, they upgraded it from a winter storm watch to a winter storm warning. So all of this up till the 22nd, it was, okay, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4 days we've been hearing about this. 4 days that we could be preparing, 4 days we could be checking on our neighbors. I don't want to, keep flogging that kind of thing, right? December 23rd, winter storm watch begins. Conditions that day deteriorated really bad. So the morning of the 23rd on, people shouldn't have been on the roads. Christmas Eve, it was so bad Christmas Eve, emergency services were not available. Snowplows couldn't even keep up. They had to get off the roads for a while. By Christmas morning, Buffalo had 43 inches of snow on the ground. And by Boxing Day, the winter storm watch ended. So like I said, that was a 7-day period, 5 days of snow, basically. And there was warnings there. It's one of those things, hey, it's coming. What are we going to do? So I went through, and like I said, there were some themes involved in some of this. And, it was people traveling when they shouldn't have traveled, people being outdoors when they shouldn't have been outdoors, carbon monoxide, over strenuous activity when the weather's really, really cold. Those were the 4 things that got everybody in these storms. So, what kind of lessons can we pull away from this and say, well, okay. And I know it's easy to sit back and judge being a Canadian or being this far away from where it happened. And that's not what I wanted to do. I kind of wanted to take this kind of deep dive, this deep historical dive into different events. So, yeah. The first one I put down, a lesson, was check on the disadvantaged people ahead of time, because one thing I noticed reading through these stories was a lot of people, they walked because it was their only mode of transportation, or a guy was coming back from a Narcotics Anonymous thing, or senior citizens who didn't have a lot felt like they needed to get out. Even one person was in a tent in a blizzard in Buffalo. That's sad, so check on disadvantaged people beforehand, to make sure they're okay. Because as preppers, part of the reason we prepare is so that we can help other people. But if we end up helping other people in the middle of a really bad situation like that, it could go bad. So check ahead of time. Make sure they have the essentials. Maybe take a care package over. I remember checking on a few people years ago when I didn't even maybe consider myself a prepper, but I was starting to do that kind of stuff. And I would check on them and say, hey, do you get candles? Do you get coffee? That kind of stuff. And then have a way to communicate, whether it's a text message or, through the phone. If that works, maybe a radio if it's somebody nearby. But it was bad enough that people shouldn't even go outdoors to check on their neighbors for a couple of days. So that should put something in your mind. If it's going to be that bad, check on people ahead of time. Make sure. So Chris Dixon says, and this is something I'm going to talk about a little further down, you can't help anyone if you fail to help yourself first. And you're not wrong, my friend. It's like the idea when you're in an airplane, we've all heard it, and those masks come down, you got to put your mask on first, no matter what, because if you try to help someone else, you could both end up being in trouble, right? And that's what happened. There's 3 or 4 scenarios where people were like, I need to go help my neighbor. They're hurt, or they're sick, or they need food, or they need diapers, or whatever. And then they ended up not coming home. Can't do it in those as much. It's going to sound, I don't know, dark or cold-hearted or whatever you want to call it, but you try to do something like that, you're going to end up not making it. The next one I said, don't shovel in the frigid cold if you have heart problems. That should go without saying. But what are the lessons from that? Well, get in shape. I know I could learn from that. Absolutely. Hire someone else to do it. Now, here's the thing. Don't worry about it if you can help it. What I have found over the years is the people that need to leave the house the least are the ones that worry the most about their snow. And by that, I mean senior citizens. I have always found that, people in my business that almost never leave their homes, rarely ever drive, are the ones that are the most worried about snow building up around their doorways. And I think part of it is they're just anxious if something happens to them, they're not going to be able to get out. But they need to remember, it just, be comfortable in staying in your own home. That's what I'm getting at. And I think it does get harder for people as they get older because I don't know if their nerves get bad or what it is, but they're always worried that their damn snow isn't done right away and that they can't get out if they have to go get the mail or they need to go get milk or bread. And something else I found with elderly family members in my family was that they tend to not keep a lot of food on hand, which was weird considering the ones I knew grew up during the Great Depression, but they just kind of ended up going to the grocery store every day because that's what got them out of the house. Letty Lou says, be prepared. It's so simple, but it's so difficult. And that's what it is, right? So yeah, here's the thing. Don't shovel if you don't have to, especially in those, like we always call them, heart attack snowstorms. If it's light, fluffy snow or you got a backpack blower or a snow blower, great, do it. But make plans. Like, I know it's tough, but if you've got family or that can help you, or if you don't, but you have health problems and it's something you can't fix by getting in better shape, then make sure you have somebody lined up that can take care of that snow when the storm ends, when it's safe for them to get out there. Now this one's simple. And growing up in the Maritimes, this was something that everybody did. Well, not everybody, but it became its own meme. But stock up on supplies before the event. We always used to joke about going out and getting your storm chips or your storm milk. And my dad, growing up, always worked at a grocery store, and he swore that Sobeys, that's one of our big grocery stores in Canada, he always swore that Sobeys and the Weather Network were in collusion, because every time they would announce a big storm, the stores would just about sell out of all the essentials. So stock up on supplies before the event. Even better, have supply on hand. Now we know this. I know it's like talking to a brick, where we're in an echo chamber. I get it. But there are some things that you might need, whether it might be, asthma medication, you might be low on that, or you might be kind of low on milk. Anyway, an hour, 2 hours, a day, whatever it happens to be, get out and do it, because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You go out ahead of time, you pick up an extra gallon of milk, and guess what? The storm blows by you. You get an extra gallon of milk in the fridge. Make cheese out of it, or, drink it. Make chocolate milk for the kids. But get out ahead of time. Make sure you have your stuff long before the weather gets bad. And also, if you're the first person to get out and do, you got first pick of all the stuff that's in the store. But secondly, you're getting out before the crowds and all the panic people, because being Canadian, I'm sure Chris Dixon's seen this before, and I always used to see it on the East Coast too. That first snowstorm, before it hits, people panic. Anytime there's a big storm coming, people panic. So, get out, get your shit, get home before that panic happens. Pay attention to the weather alerts and take them seriously. So start making just in case plans. I mean, this is something Becky and I have done ahead of time anyway, is to make get out of Dodge plans for a whole bunch of different scenarios. But if you see, okay, this is the 19th of December, and they're telling me that by the 22nd, we could be seeing the worst blizzard in 30 years. Okay, well, let's make some plans. Can we leave? Well, I don't know. Can we? Can we go 6-8 hours south and miss most of the event? Well, maybe you could. Maybe you don't have the financial resources to do it. So, all right, let's circle back and say, okay, well, where's the warming shelter? Are we going to be safe at home? There's a whole bunch of things to look at. Do we have enough food on hand? Do we have enough fuel on hand? Do we have backup fuel sources? All of that kind of stuff, right? So pay attention to those weather alerts seriously. Make your plans, but revisit those alerts, because shit changes, and it can change last minute. Like I had Phil from the Matter of Facts podcast on last year, and him and his wife ended up getting stuck in a hurricane that scared the living shit out of them. And they did everything right. They followed the weather patterns. They followed it, and they said, okay, it looks like it's going to miss. And then last minute it changed. So the more we keep our eye on those weather alerts, the safer we might be, or at least make plans based on them. And the cool thing is, we've always talked about this, but if you ever need to get out of Dodge and you want to drive 4 or 5 hours one way or the other and stay in a hotel, well, you might have just got yourself a little vacation. If you go and nothing happens, great. But if you don't go and something does happen, well, that's not so great, is it? Now, here's the one we talked about before, and this one might sound a little crass, might sound a little bit like Shane off The Walking Dead, but look out for you and your family first. Look out for only you and your family during the event, because like Chris said, and like I was saying, you can't help anybody if you're dead, and put on your mask first, right? Make sure you're situated, make sure you have supplies, make sure your house is safe and secure so that you and your family can get through. And then you can be a first responder after the fact if you have all these people you need to look out for. But if you don't make it through the storm, if you don't have a fortress to look after yourself in during it, then you're not going to come out the other side, and you're not going to be able to help anybody. So you have to. That's what it comes down to when, is the ant and the grasshopper, right? Making sure you have your food and you can sit back and be prepared for the storm and then deal with the repercussions on the other end. But you got to look out for you and your family, and then help everybody else afterwards. Because if you can't get through the storm, what are you going to do? I have a backup power plan. This one was reminded of me because the poor lady who had an oxygen machine in her house and didn't have power to power it. Like, I don't know. I like I said, I didn't want this to come off as dark or judgmental, but if you have a machine that requires electricity to keep you alive, you would think you would have at least one form of backup power for it. I don't know, like battery packs or a battery backup. A generator might work, but in those friggin' storms, I don't know if you want to be outside running one. You want to make sure you have a safe place to run your generator if you can, like under a covered awning, something that's away from your windows. I don't know, but I would make sure that I had some way to power my essential medical gear if it looked like it was going to be a nasty friggin' blizzard. Now, this is the next one. This is a tough one because, you want to be with your family, but there was, I'm going to read this before we go on to the next one here. I've heard Letty talk a little bit about this, but she said, my in-laws are not, and she put not in 3 capital letters, prepared for anything, and expect the power company in the township to take care of everything. No generator, no propane heater, nothing. And she said, to follow that up, her in-laws thought they were nuts for getting a little buddy heater. So here's the thing, and we're going to talk about this just a little further down here, but first responders couldn't show up in this scenario. When my dad was a kid, well, a teenager, and they had the Groundhog Day storm, they were like 7 days without power. The power company couldn't get there because guess what? They weren't a priority. It took them 7 days to get there. And people further down Digby Neck where he grew up were 14 days without power. So yeah, you know what? You can expect the power company to take care of you. But how's the old saying go? Wish in one hand, shit in the other, and see which one fills up first. Because that's what's going to happen. And it's not because, it's not because they don't have your best interest at heart, or, it's not because the government or the power company doesn't want to get there and fix it. It's just not feasible. I mean, I remember we had the ice storm in Nova Scotia, it just missed us. But when I lived in Nova Scotia, I was in junior high. They had the ice storm. I think it was 1998, so maybe senior high. It went through Quebec, and there were thousands and thousands of power lines down. So sure, is the power company going to fix it? Yeah, but it could take weeks and weeks to fix. So how can you sit back and say, "Oh, it's all right"? I don't get it. I just don't. Lady said, we just took care of ourselves, food, candles, heat, etc. They were invited to join us, but they wouldn't leave their home and had to melt snow for 5 days to flush toilets, wash dishes. Oh my God. And then she said, next storm, she bought a bottle of water to have. Well, you know what? It's one step in the right direction. It is a facepalm. I know it is. Hopefully they'll get further along. I remember the day when I thought, hey, I got a case of water, so I'm all set to survive Y2K, right? And that's the thing. And that's, I guess, why I talked about looking after us and our own family, because at the end of the day, that's who we're responsible to. Those are the ones we're expected to look after. And everybody else is secondary concern to us. So by making sure we come through a situation like this as unscathed and as reinforced as we can, allows us to come out the other side and not say, see, I told you so, but hey, how can I help? Right? And that's the important thing. So lesson 7 out of this was, and this was a tough one, because there was, hey, Kentucky Sustainable Living. Good to have you tonight, Jason. There was a lady who passed away because she got stuck in her vehicle. Would they say 6 minutes or 6 miles from home, because she decided she was going to drive home from work. Now, here's the thing. How would you solve that? How could you? Well, I mean, the first thing is stay the hell at work. Now you're probably thinking, and this is what sucks, because we all, especially as parents, we want to be home with our kids. We want to be home where we're comfortable in a nasty storm. And that kind of stuff makes us make piss poor decisions, right? So this lady was finished up her shift, and she probably thought, well, I'm only 6 miles from home. I'll hop in the car and drive. I've driven every single day before this. It'll be fine. Well, it unfortunately wasn't. So if you're not sure, 2 things: stay the hell at work, find a place to sleep, but have a plan ahead of time. Talk to your boss and say, hey, boss man, if things ever get bad, what can I do? And I was reminded of just a year ago. Well, just the other day, I had a Facebook memory. It was actually kind of cool. My sister-in-law and her 2 boys spent the night at our house because while they were working at the daycare that day, the freezing rain came in, and it was so bad that my brother-in-law couldn't get back to town from his parents' place, and it was too slippery to even consider driving home. So instead of risking it, because, hey, it sure would be nice to go home, they stayed at our house. So and they could have stayed at the daycare. It absolutely would have been fine. So have a plan. Talk to your boss ahead of time. Here's the other thing. Have a bug out bag with you all the time, or a get home bag, or a grab and go bag, as Becky and I like to call it. Keep it in your vehicle, or leave it in your locker or your desk at work, so that you have the essentials to be able to spend a day or 2 at work. Now, if you're an essential worker and you have to be at work, say you're a 911 dispatcher or an ambulance driver or whatever, then you know what? Here's another thing. Why don't you go to work early? And I think, all the millennials or the Gen Zs are like, I can't go to work early. They won't pay me. Well, that's true, but not being dead would be more important. So if you got to go to work early, stay the night there. That's all. Just because we've always gotten home safe from work every day doesn't mean when the shit hits the fan, you're going to get home that night, right? When we end up being under stress or in shitty situations, that's when we end up making bad decisions. So yeah, like I said, stay at work. If you're not sure, just don't do it. Ask around or leave early or just don't leave at all. That it sucks. Like I wouldn't want to sleep at work, but you know where I wouldn't want to sleep even more? On the side of the road or on the side of the interstate in my vehicle until I ran out of gas, right? Have a carbon monoxide monitor. That's simple, but not just have one that you know works. Test it out. Check the batteries, get the little gas testers to make sure it works. Here's another one. I had something I didn't think of. So I've got an electrician redoing the electrical over at a rental, and he showed up here, I don't know, about a month ago, and he said, Tim, it's just about freezing in this rental. And he'd been in there 2 days before, so I hadn't had to check on it yet. So we'd had a nasty snowstorm, and it's one of those new high efficiency furnaces that just has PVC pipe that vents it just out through the side of the house. And guess what happened? It got clogged off from snow and ice, and the furnace shut down, which is better than your house filling full of carbon monoxide gas. So know where your exhaust vent is so that it can't get blocked off. Know what kind of safety features your furnace has in case something like that happens. Know how to relight it, know how to test, maybe have a second. I got one of those CO monitors off of Amazon. It was less than $20 and the thing works great. Make sure you have fresh batteries, make sure it's tested, make sure it hasn't expired. Just check your carbon monoxide, because that's something simple. That poor young guy, he didn't think he was going to go to bed and not wake up, right? All for the want of a battery or a non-functioning carbon monoxide detector, or in his case, a clogged exhaust vent for his furnace. So have a way to clear that, even if the weather's really, really shitty. That's just something to keep an eye on, whether it's having your security camera pointed at it, or just knowing, hey, I can get out there and I can reach it with whatever I have. But yeah. Number 9, just do not travel. I mean, it should go without saying it. And I was actually surprised at how few people actually ended up stuck in their vehicles and passing away, which was actually kind of made me feel good, because the worst of this was that it happened over Christmas. So Christmas Eve, Christmas Day was some of the worst weather they had. And that sucks, because everybody wants to get together for Christmas. If there's one day of the year that we just look forward to and we love to get together as a family, it's Christmas Eve. We go, we have a meal, we socialize, a couple of drinks. It's our favorite day of the year. And it would suck missing out on that. But again, I'm going to say it, it would suck worse not ever having another Christmas, right? So just don't travel. There's not much more I can say about that. If the weather's as shit as they're given and you think there's a chance, just stay the hell home. There's no reason to be out there if you can help it. Number 10, like I said, there's a really good chance that that first responders aren't going to be able to get out. I mean, the storm has to be bad when the snowplows have to sit off the side of the road. When visibility was 0, what are they going to do? You get 80-mile-an-hour winds with 50-some inches of snow, all blowing in at once, minus 30 degrees Celsius, and 0 visibility. How effective is a snowplow going to be? And if a snowplow can't get through, fire can't get through, EMS can't get through, police can't get through. And then, of course, after all of this, there was looting. There was looting because first responders couldn't get through to help. So that's something else to think about on the other end of this. But have plans in place. We've always said this. We have to be our own first responder. And whether that means being armed to take care of looters, whether that means, being trained in first aid. But a lot of this really comes down to prevention, because the people who ended up needing first responders in almost every instance wouldn't have if they hadn't made a poor decision, right? So don't rely on first responders, but also don't put yourself in a position where you're going to need to rely on first responders. Because like I said, almost every one of these scenarios of the 30-some people that passed away in this big Buffalo storm, if they made a different decision, they'd still be here. So it's kind of dark, it's kind of sad, but it's just one of those things. And the final point that I pulled out of this one was desperation causes a person to make irrational decisions. So when you get yourself in a bad situation, when you feel overwhelmed, when you're completely 100% stressed out, you make shitty decisions. Becky and I were rewatching The Last of Us last night, taking notes for the show, and that was a theme that I noticed in there, was exactly that. When you get in a bad scenario, when a couple Sundays ago, I was just trying to think of what it was. The title of the episode was "Never Quit on a Bad Day," because everything seems overwhelming, but you make piss poor decisions when shit is going sideways all around you. So how do you solve that? Well, it's pretty hard to solve it in the middle of everything falling apart. So you have to eliminate most of that by preparation, being prepared, right? So eliminate all the reasons for making poor decisions beforehand. And what are they? Well, like I said, have a plan in place. Know what you can do if this weather gets bad. CO2 detector. Know that you can stay at work. Everything we talked about before this. By being prepared, we'll make sure that you're never in, or let's put it this way. I don't like to say never, but what it'll do is it will eliminate almost all of the chances of being in a bad situation where desperation happens. You're not going to eliminate them all, but it's going to eliminate a ton of them. And I'm an odds man. I'm a numbers man. So when it comes down to it, if you can eliminate as much desperation as possible, you're going to be able to make rational decisions when the wind's trying to blow through your doors, right? So that's what it was, guys. This one was really new, and I kind of hesitated to talk about this scenario because, well, like I said, it was fresh, it was new, and I didn't want anybody to think, well, you're just talking about this person or that person, but I really just wanted to deal with it because when I heard the scenario, when I heard the situation, hey, a blizzard went through Buffalo and 30 some people died. And I thought, how the hell does that happen in this day and age? I wanted to take a deep dive because I needed to answer the questions. And then when it came down to it, it was just a few simple things. People making the decisions to travel when they shouldn't have, people making the decision to go outdoors when they shouldn't have, and people not being prepared, whether it's through carbon monoxide or power outages. That's all it was. And the first two were bad decisions, and those could have easily been fixed by just making a different decision. The final one was being unprepared. That can be solved ahead of time. But like I said, I wanted to take a deep dive. I've got a bunch. I'd love to take a look at some odd ones. I know it's easy for me to talk about snowstorms because I live in Canada, but it would be nice to take a look at some hurricanes, some power outages, all kinds of different things over the months. But it's neat. We'll do kind of a historical dive into some of these nasty scenarios, and we'll see what we can find out. So this one was a little shorter tonight. I wasn't sure how this episode was going to end up. It was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to get some feedback from you guys, because if you want me to keep doing these type of episodes every couple of months, it's fun because it just kind of fits into the Thursday night. And I love talking about preparedness and preparedness, and something I hadn't with a few. Let's go with it and see what happens. So yeah, beyond that, guys, I'm excited. I'm happy as to get out, and I can't wait to go to the Thrivalist Fair at the end of May. So if you're around and you want to check that out in Addie, Washington, I would be very excited to meet up with you in person. And tomorrow night, I've got Mrs. Cook coming back on with me. Letty Lou says tornadoes are a good topic. My town had a big one come through several years ago. Yes, we will. Well, another one, when I was down, there was the fires. I was it near Knoxville, not too long, a few years ago, and then there was some flooding. So there's a lot of different ones. And, we always, I guess, what's kind of fun about doing these is we always talk about the mythical what if scenario, right? Like, what are we going to do in this hurricane, or what are we going to do in this tornado, or what are we going to do in this long-term power outage, right? It's fun. We talk about it. We're like, okay, but you know what? When we look at what people actually did in actual scenarios, then there's something a little more applicable to day-to-day life. Letty Lou says daily tornado siren test at 12:01. It would really suck if the actual tornado came through at 12:01 that day, but I'm sure they have a plan for that. So yeah, maybe we'll take a look at a tornado next time, guys, and take a deep dive into one of these. If you guys have suggestions, it would be neat because I never lived through a tornado. We get plow winds here through in Alberta, which are close to mild, very minor tornadoes. There's very rarely a deadly tornado in Alberta, but it does happen on occasion. But I know down in the Midwest, it gets a lot worse. So yeah, we'll take a look at it. So with that, guys, like I said, tomorrow night, the missus will be coming on. I always love having her on. We're going to do episode 2 of The Last of Us. I'm really enjoying it. I don't know if anybody else out there has been watching it. Well, I know some of you have because I've been hearing back from you, but we've had a lot of fun. It's just fun, her and I doing this. And I don't know, we're going to figure it out, but I may end up spinning off the pop culture thing. I may do something kind of similar to what Jack did with the Bitcoin breakout, where it's still part of this, but it could also be its own standalone podcast, because it'd be fun to do a weekly pop culture kind of episode. Maybe I've had a few ideas. We've talked about going back and watching Jericho. Also, I thought maybe it would be fun to take the absolute worst, have somebody suggest the worst post-apocalyptic film of all time, and then we'll sit down and watch some of them once a week, and we can respond to how bad the movies were. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Once in a while, it's fun to watch a really bad movie and then to talk about it and share in the grief. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. I always have 100 good ideas, and then of course, February 2nd, Groundhog Day. That's coming up for the Groundhog Day giveaway. So guys, with that, thanks for dropping by. I know this was a little different episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to hear some feedback from you. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.